What's going on, everybody? Hope everybody's feeling good. Hope everybody's doing well. Guys, we are back with an update. This woman cheated on her husband, lost everything. She tried to get him for alimony and everything. She lost everything. She signed a prenup. She's back with an update. She wants to update everybody. Guys, if you don't know what I'm talking about, this story was from yesterday. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I want to play it first. If you know exactly what I'm talking about, go down to the description, click update. It'll take you to the latest. Let's get into it. Well, ma'am, you signed the prenup. You know, you you knew what you were getting into, and you tried to find some type of loophole. It didn't work. It didn't work.
My divorce was finalized in March. Here's what really happened. Hi there. My name is Mary, and I never thought I'd be the type to write in to a YouTube channel. Honestly, I've watched your videos here and there, usually in the background while I'm folding laundry or trying to distract myself. But something changed after March 2025 when my divorce with my ex-husband, James, was finalized. That month, everything just hit me at once. I felt like I needed to get some of this off my chest. Not because I expect sympathy or a do-over, but because I can't hold it in anymore. Maybe if someone hears my story, they'll think twice before making the same mistakes I did. Let me start from the beginning. James and I met back in 2012 at a friend's wedding. He wasn't flashy or loud, just calm, grounded, and incredibly thoughtful. He offered me his jacket when it got cold during the reception, and I remember thinking how rare that kind of man was. We started dating a few months after that, and for the most part, things were good. He wasn't the type to raise his voice, and I think part of me mistook his silence for weakness. Looking back now, that was my first big mistake, underestimating the man I married. We got married in 2015. It was a small wedding. My parents were thrilled because James had a good job, came from a decent family, and didn't give off red flag energy like some of the guys I dated in the past. I won't lie. Part of the appeal was the stability. I had just gotten out of a messy relationship, and James felt like the exact opposite of chaos. I signed a prenup. At the time, I didn't think anything of it. He explained it calmly, said it was just to protect both of us, and I agreed without reading it too carefully. I was so in love with the idea of security that I assumed we'd never need to pull that document out again. Now I realize that was a colossal mistake on my part, not the signing, but the assuming. Fast forward a few years. Things changed between us. We weren't fighting, but we weren't connecting either. He worked long hours. I worked from home and had a lot of alone time. We were drifting, and I convinced myself that we were just in a rut. But instead of talking to him about it, I did something I can never take back. I cheated. It wasn't planned. That's what I told myself anyway. It started as texting someone I met through a mutual friend. He gave me attention, made me feel attractive again, listened to me complain about James. One thing led to another, and we crossed a line. I told myself it was harmless, that it was just a phase, and that I'd eventually stop. But the truth is, I was trying to fill a hole in myself that James didn't create, and that this other man could never fix. What I didn't realize is that James had figured it out long before I knew he knew. I had a gut feeling, woman's intuition or something, that he was onto me. He'd come home from work and be different. Not angry, just distant. I chalked it up to stress. He didn't confront me right away. That was the part that scared me in hindsight. He waited. He was polite, even gentle, and he made dinner like normal. But he'd sometimes stare at me a little longer than usual, like he was studying me. Now I realize he was getting his ducks in a row. Eventually, he found the messages on my phone. He didn't say anything the first time. Instead, he started quietly pulling back. He changed the passwords on our joint accounts, rerouted his paycheck, and started talking to a lawyer. He didn't yell. He didn't confront me with rage. One evening, he just came home and asked, "Are you seeing someone else?" I panicked. I lied. I said no. I told him he was being paranoid. I said he was seeing things. I said it was probably some kind of spam message he found. I said anything I could think of to cover my tracks. I told myself I was protecting our marriage, but really, I was protecting myself from the shame I wasn't ready to face. He didn't argue. He just nodded. That scared me more than if he had screamed. A few days later, I tried to access a joint account I had always had access to. I was going to move some funds. Nothing huge, just enough to feel like I had something for myself in case things got messy. But I couldn't log in. My access had been revoked. That's when I knew for sure that he knew everything. Not only that, he had been planning for this. I didn't even realize how much he had been observing me until the rug was pulled right out from under me. The day I got served with the divorce papers was the day it all felt real. There was no more pretending, no more covering my tracks. He had the receipts, the messages, the times, and dates. The confrontation was short. He just said, "I wish things could have been different," and walked out. I thought I could reason with him. I tried texting, calling, even sending him a long email begging to talk. He didn't respond. He'd gone completely no contact. My mom tried calling him too. She begged him to think it over. She told him marriage was worth fighting for. He told her, respectfully but firmly, that he was done. The part that stung the most, he had already moved on. By the time the divorce proceedings really got going, I found out he was seeing someone else. She wasn't flashy. In fact, she reminded me of me when James first met me. Kind, quiet, wholesome. It felt like salt in a wound. I accused him of cheating back, of having an emotional affair. He denied it. Maybe it was true. Maybe it wasn't. But the difference was, he wasn't married anymore. I tried to bring it up during mediation, said it was too soon, inappropriate, disrespectful. The mediator reminded me that James had filed for divorce well before he started dating again. And since we had a prenup and weren't married for at least 10 years, I wasn't entitled to his retirement or alimony. My lawyer was sympathetic, but honest. "There's nothing we can do," she said. That's when it really hit me. I had built this life on a foundation I thought was secure, only to realize I had no safety net. I didn't know where to go emotionally. I didn't know how to accept that I'd made mistakes, serious ones, that couldn't be undone. The divorce process itself, brutal. James didn't gloat. He didn't try to punish me. He didn't even bring up the cheating in the court filings. He was professional, cold, and completely disengaged. I felt like a stranger to him, which hurt more than I can explain. During one mediation session, I broke down in tears, begging for a second chance. He kept his arms crossed and didn't say a word. I remember one night sitting on the floor of my apartment surrounded by boxes. I had moved out of the house. We agreed I'd leave since the house was his before we got married, and I just stared at all my things. I didn't even know where to start unpacking. I didn't recognize the woman in the mirror anymore. I had no marriage, no backup plan, no dignity left. My mother tried to be supportive. She would call and say things like, "He'll come around," or "Men do this when they're hurt." But I could tell in her voice that she was disappointed in me, not just for cheating, but for losing a good man. She even drove to James's office one day and tried to speak with him face to face. He thanked her for coming, but told her again he was moving on. The whole experience changed me. It's easy to blame him. I used to do that in my head. Say it wasn't fair that he snooped through my phone, that he shut me out, that he didn't give me a second chance. But the truth is, I betrayed his trust. He didn't owe me grace after that. Would it have been nice? Sure. But expecting kindness from someone you've hurt deeply isn't a right. It's a hope. I've done a lot of reflecting these past few months. I've gone to therapy. I've stopped trying to contact him. I don't stalk his new girlfriend's social media anymore. I've started journaling, reading, and trying to build a life I can be proud of again. But I won't lie, it's lonely. The silence is loud, the guilt is heavy, and there's a part of me that still dreams about waking up and undoing it all. But life doesn't work that way. Choices have consequences, and mine led me here. I guess I'm writing this because I want people to know that cheating isn't just a mistake. It's a choice that can cost you everything. I lost a good man, a stable life, and a sense of who I thought I was. And even if James never hears this, I hope someone else out there does and thinks twice before crossing that line. To the women who are in a rocky marriage and tempted to stray, don't. Talk to your husband, speak your truth, seek therapy. Do anything but cheat. It's not worth it. And to the men who've been betrayed, I hope you find peace like James did. You didn't deserve the hurt, but you do deserve the healing. Thank you for reading this, and thank you for your channel. Even though some of the stories are hard to hear, they remind me that I'm not the only one navigating heartbreak and regret. Sincerely, Mary. Follow up to my last email, what I left out about the divorce with James. Hi again. This is Mary. I wrote in recently about my divorce from James and how things unfolded after our marriage ended in March of 2025. First off, I want to thank you for even considering reading my story. After I sent that first email, I stayed up late refreshing your page, wondering if you'd post it or read it out loud. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized there were things I left out. Things I wasn't quite ready to say the first time, and some that I just didn't have the courage to admit to myself. I guess I rushed that first email because part of me wanted to be done with the story, to wrap it up with a bow, say lesson learned, and move on. But that's not the full picture. The truth is, healing isn't that neat. And my part in what happened runs even deeper than I let on. So, if it's not too late, I'd like to offer a part 2, a more honest, less filtered version. Because if you're going to share my story, I want it to be the truth, not just the part that paints me as regretful, but the whole thing, even the ugly bits I tried to skim over. Let me start with something I didn't fully explain. I wasn't just unfaithful physically. I was emotionally unavailable for a long time, long before I cheated. I used to tell myself James was the one who drifted first. But when I'm being completely honest, I stopped showing up for him emotionally about 2 years before everything exploded. There was a point when I stopped asking how his day was. I'd nod, pretend to listen, but I was halfway through TikTok or checking notifications. I stopped packing him lunch. I rolled my eyes when he talked about work. I acted like his routine life was boring, like he was boring. That emotional neglect, no matter how quiet, is its own kind of betrayal. And the worst part is, I did it without even realizing how far gone I was. I had convinced myself I deserved more attention. I wanted sparks again, excitement. But instead of working on the marriage or admitting that I felt unfulfilled, I numbed myself through distractions. I went shopping, scrolled endlessly, and texted other people to feel wanted. I didn't cheat because James failed me. I cheated because I stopped being present in the relationship. That's something I couldn't say in the first email, but it's the truth. Another thing I left out is the role my friends played in all this. I had 2 close friends. Let's call them Denise and Kyla. When the flirting with the other guy started, I told them. They didn't stop me. In fact, Denise laughed and said, "Girl, you only live once. You've been a wife long enough. Do you?" Kayla said, "If James really loved you, he'd notice you're unhappy." Looking back, those words were poison, but I drank them up like they were support. I don't blame them entirely. It was still my decision, but I realize now how dangerous it is to surround yourself with people who validate your worst impulses. Neither one of them encouraged me to talk to James. No one said, go to counseling, and I didn't ask for that either. I wanted validation, not accountability. When James found out and everything hit the fan, those same friends ghosted me. Denise distanced herself, and Kayla tried to blame me for letting it get too far. That part was isolating. I had ruined my marriage and lost my closest friends at the same time. I never mentioned that in the first email because it still stings. And now, James's new girlfriend. I danced around this in the first email because it's still something I'm trying to wrap my head around. Let me just say it. I hated her at first with a passion. Not because she was cruel or petty, she wasn't, but because she was everything I used to be. She supported his hobbies. She actually liked watching documentaries with him. She'd pack him healthy lunches and leave handwritten notes, which I found out from mutual friends. She showed up to one of his work events and impressed his coworkers. And when James started posting a few pictures with her, he looked happy. Not showy happy, not rebound relationship happy, but peaceful, grounded. That made me spiral. At one point, I drove by our old house just to see if she was there. I don't know what I thought I was doing. I wasn't going to talk to her, but seeing her car in the driveway where mine used to be, that hurt in a way I can't describe. I told my mom about it. She asked if I wanted her to talk to James again. I begged her not to. I didn't want to look even more desperate than I already felt. But the truth is, part of me wanted her to do it anyway. Part of me still wanted someone to save me from my own decisions. That's the part I hate admitting the most. That even now, after everything, there's still a part of me that wants to undo it all and go back to before I ever picked up my phone and started texting someone else. Something else I didn't share was how badly I handled the legal side of the divorce. When I realized James had already spoken to a lawyer and filed the paperwork, I rushed to get my own. I didn't do the research. I didn't shop around. I just called the first person someone recommended. And she was fine, but she wasn't magical. She looked over the prenup, shook her head, and said, "You really tied your hands." I tried to argue that I had given up my career to work part-time and support our home life. She nodded, but reminded me that none of that mattered since we weren't married for at least 10 years. The prenup specifically said no alimony under that threshold. And since all his retirement accounts were pre-marriage and separate property, I wasn't getting a dime from that either. That was another wave of reality. I remember going home that day and sitting in the car for an hour in the driveway, just staring. I had spent a decade assuming I'd be taken care of if things ever went south. That's not because James promised it. It's because I convinced myself that marriage was a safety net I didn't have to manage. I never built my own parachute. I assumed his would be enough for both of us. Emotionally, I spiraled more than I admitted last time. There were nights I couldn't eat, days I couldn't get out of bed. I started sleeping until noon and staying up till 4 a.m. binge watching relationship videos. I wanted to hear other people talk about divorce, about cheating, about healing. But the more I listened, the worse I felt. It was like living in an echo chamber of regret. I thought about messaging James so many times. There were nights when I even typed out long paragraphs, apologies, reflections, pleas, but I never hit send. He had me blocked on everything anyway. But more than that, I knew deep down that it wouldn't fix anything. He had moved on. I even went to his job once. I parked across the street and sat there, hoping to see him walking out. I didn't. I don't know what I would have done if I had. Probably nothing. Just cry harder. It was pathetic, and I hated myself for it. One day I hit rock bottom. I got drunk and called his mom. That's something I'm deeply ashamed of. She was kind, but firm. She said, "Mary, I will always wish the best for you, but James is doing well now. Please don't pull him back into this." That felt like a nail in the coffin. Her voice was kind, but I heard the subtext. You had your chance. You blew it. Let him be. Here's another thing I left out. My own family wasn't fully on my side either. At first, my mom defended me, sure, but over time, even she started pulling back. She stopped bringing him up. My dad, who had always been fond of James, refused to even talk about the divorce. When I visited them for Easter, the energy was different. I wasn't the married daughter anymore. I was the daughter who wrecked her marriage and moved into a rented apartment with a cat and a pile of boxes she still hadn't unpacked. My younger sister, who's been married 5 years, actually pulled me aside and asked, "Why didn't you just talk to him before cheating?" I didn't have an answer, still don't. So why am I really writing this second email? Because I don't want the first one to be the final word. I don't want to be the woman who says, "Oops, I messed up, but I'm growing now," without owning the full weight of what happened. I cheated. I lied. I gaslit a man who loved me. I ignored his needs. I treated his stability like a weakness. I let friends encourage my worst decisions. I underestimated the impact of betrayal. I lost a good man, and now I'm sitting with all of that. It's a bitter pill to swallow, but I need to swallow it if I want to become someone better than the version of me who made those choices. If you do end up sharing my story, I hope people hear this part too. The part where the consequences don't come like a firestorm. They come slowly, like shadows creeping in after sunset. Quiet, subtle, devastating. I'm working on healing. I'm not there yet. I'm learning how to sit with discomfort without trying to run from it. I'm learning how to stop blaming everyone else. And I'm trying to build a life that has value even if no one else sees it. If anyone hears my story and feels like they're on the edge of making the same mistake, please don't. Please have the hard conversation. Go to counseling. Tell your partner how you feel. Be honest before it's too late. Because when it is too late, all that's left is regret. And trust me, that's a lonely place to be. Thanks again for reading this. I don't expect forgiveness. I just hope it helps someone. Sincerely, Mary. Thank you for reading my story, but now I need help. Hi again. This is Mary. I honestly didn't think I'd be writing you a third time. After I sent in my first and second emails, I told myself that was it. That I had gotten the worst of it out of my system and said my piece. But when I saw that you actually read my story, Mystery, on your channel, I broke down in tears. Not out of anger or shame, though I felt plenty of both, but because someone finally heard me. Thank you, truly, from the bottom of my heart. I never imagined anyone would care about what I had to say, let alone share it on a platform with thousands, maybe millions of viewers. I was scared to listen at first. I was sitting on my living room floor with the volume low, holding my breath, just waiting for the sound of my own name to make my stomach flip. And when it did, I cried hard. Because for the first time in a long time, I felt seen. Not pitied, not excused, just seen. You read it fairly. You didn't sugarcoat it. You didn't try to defend me, and you didn't attack me either. You just let my words exist as they were. That meant everything. But of course, not everyone was as kind. After the video was posted, I did what I probably shouldn't have. I scrolled through the comments. At first, I told myself I wouldn't. I knew better. I knew it would hurt. But curiosity got the better of me. And maybe, deep down, I was hoping someone out there might understand. Maybe someone had been where I was. Maybe someone would say, "Hey, I've messed up too. You're not alone." Instead, most of what I saw were people calling me names. Some said I was cold-blooded, manipulative, a gold digger, evil, and my favorite, a narcissist who's just mad she didn't get paid for cheating. That one made me laugh and cry at the same time. Others said I had no remorse, that I was only sorry because I got caught and lost everything. And you know what? I get it. I really do. I read the emails you post every week. I've heard the stories of men who gave their all and were betrayed. So I can't even blame people for not liking me. If I were them, I probably wouldn't like me either, but it still hurt. What those commenters don't see is what happens after the affair, after the divorce, after the silence. They don't see what it's like to sit alone on your couch, staring at a dinner you made for no one. They don't see the nights I cry into a pillow so my neighbors don't hear me through the thin apartment walls. They don't see the job I lost because I was so emotionally wrecked I couldn't keep up, or the savings I drained just to get by, or the years I invested into a man I truly thought would always be by my side. They don't see that I do feel remorse, so much that it keeps me up most nights, that I do take full responsibility, that I wake up every morning wishing I could go back and stop myself at the first wrong turn, but I can't. And now I'm just trying to figure out how to live with what I've done and who I've become. And that brings me to why I'm writing again. Because honestly, I'm lost. I've spent the last few months trying to heal, but I don't even know what that means anymore. I go to therapy, I journal, I walk around the park listening to self-help podcasts, I do yoga, drink lemon water, try to meditate. I've done everything the internet says to do when you're broken. And yet, I still feel like I'm drowning. Not just in guilt, but in confusion, in silence, in this weird fog of who am I now? I don't have a marriage anymore. I don't have James. I barely have friends. Most of the ones I had pulled away after the divorce. I have acquaintances, sure, coworkers who ask how my weekend was, and neighbors who nod in the hallway. But I don't have my person. I don't even have a person. And worse, I don't know who I am outside of the roles I used to play. I was James's wife for nearly a decade. I was the one who planned his birthday dinners, coordinated holidays with both sides of the family, handled the little things that made our life smooth. Now I'm just Mary, a single 30-something woman in a one-bedroom apartment with a cat named Olive and more regrets than I know what to do with. I've thought about dating again, briefly, not because I want to rush into something, but because I miss the feeling of being known. But every time I even consider downloading an app or going to a singles event, I freeze. What would I even tell someone? Hi, I'm Mary. I was married for almost 10 years, cheated, lost everything, and now I'm trying to figure out if I still deserve love. Yeah, that's not exactly swipe right material. Besides, I'm not ready, and more importantly, I'm scared. Scared I'll make the same mistakes, scared I'll hurt someone else, scared I'll settle for the wrong person just to feel less alone. So here I am, writing to a stranger who shared my story because, weirdly, this feels like the safest place I have right now. This community, even with its critics, has something I'm craving: honesty. And I need that more than anything. I need guidance, not judgment, not pity, just guidance. What do I do now? How do I rebuild a life that feels like it imploded from the inside out? How do I move on when the person I want to apologize to the most won't even speak to me? How do I forgive myself when every time I try, a voice in my head says, "You don't deserve it"? What does it look like to start over when you've burned bridges and lost direction? These aren't rhetorical questions. I'm genuinely asking. If anyone reading or listening has been here, truly here, please share what helped. Because right now, I feel like I'm walking through quicksand, and every step just makes me sink deeper. There's a quote I read recently that said, "You're not starting from scratch, you're starting from experience." I want to believe that. I want to believe that the pain I felt can become fuel for growth, that I can turn my mess into meaning somehow. But it's hard to see the light when your whole world feels dim. I haven't spoken to James in over 6 months. Not a word. He's still with that woman. I think they moved in together. Someone told me she has a kid from a previous relationship, and James is stepping up as a father figure. That one hit me harder than I expected. Not out of jealousy, but out of grief, because that's the man I broke, the man who trusted me. And now he's doing for someone else what I always assumed he'd do for us. Be a husband, be a dad, be dependable and present. I missed out on that. I threw it away, and I have no one to blame but myself. I know people will say, well, what did you expect? And again, I get it. But knowing I deserve the consequences doesn't make them hurt less, doesn't make the nights easier, doesn't fill the quiet. So here's the raw truth. I am lost. I am grieving. I am angry, mostly at myself. I am lonely in ways I didn't know were possible. And I don't know how to climb out of this, but I want to. That's the important part. I want to heal. I want to stop defining myself by my worst mistake. I want to believe there's a future for me that isn't filled with regret. I want to become someone I'm proud of again, even if no one else ever sees it. And maybe, just maybe, someone in your audience has been here too. Maybe they've fallen apart and put themselves back together. Maybe they've walked through the fire and made it to the other side. Maybe they can share what helped, what gave them hope, what made them stop crying in the middle of the night and start living again. Because I don't need someone to fix this for me. I know that's not possible, but I do need to know that it can get better. That I'm not doomed to be the villain in everyone's story forever. That I can still write a new chapter, even if the last one ended in disaster. Thank you again for reading, for giving people like me, messy, flawed human people, a chance to speak. Thank you for not cutting my story off at the scandal, and thank you for letting me try again. I don't know where this journey goes next, but I do know I can't do it alone. With the shaky hope, Mary. Thank you for reading my story, but now I need help.